Hey everyone. If you're anything like me, you often find yourself looking for business insight in podcasts. And I'm sure many of you are also into meditation and reflection to help better understand yourself. Former guest of the show, Carl Bonner, decided to launch a podcast that brings these two elements together. It's a series of guided self-reflection exercises, but specifically for freelance creatives like you and me, focusing on the struggles we face as we try to grow our businesses, while also finding more happiness in the work that we do. It's called Thanks for Thinking. It's definitely an unusual format, but if you want to grow your self-awareness, find deeper career satisfaction, and make more money, then I think this podcast might be for you. Experience it for yourself and click the link in the show notes below. Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 136 with Mike Tompa. I had a great chat with Mike and we talked about so many things, including his classical background, starting music really early. We talked about his bold move to England to try to find the studio that made the records he loved without even having a contact. We talked about being a musician and a producer, his approach to production, working with artists. We talked about collaboration and outsourcing for mixing. We talked about all analog synths and sound design, embracing chaos and different genres of music, having fun, and literally everything in between. So I think you're going to love this conversation. So with all that to say, here's my conversation with Mike Tompa here on Secret Sonics. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Mike Tompa. Mike is a music producer, writer, and musician based out of Toronto, Canada. His vast experience in so many genres of music allows Mike to bring a well-rounded and multifaceted view to every session he is on. Mike and I connected on Instagram a while back, I believe after my episode with Chris Crelia, and I finally reached out to see if he'd be interested to come on the podcast, which he's graciously agreed to do. So with all that to say, welcome to Secret Sonics, Mike.
Hello, thank you. Great to finally chat.
Oh, yeah, totally. I like loving the Toronto crew. My wife is from Toronto, and I don't know, I just enjoy spending time with Canadians, I guess.
Love it.
Awesome. So tell the audience a little bit about your story. How did music start for you? I know you have like some classical training. How did that lead you on your journey to what you're doing today, which is like production mostly, I think?
Yeah, absolutely. I started playing violin when I was about 5. As far as I remember it, my parents tell me I used to bug them and beg them for a violin, and they didn't really take it too seriously. And I did for like a couple of years, I guess. Honestly, it was because the girl around the corner was taking violin lessons, and I definitely wanted to hang out with her more. So I started that when I was 5, sort of kept up, never really stopped. I still do it quite a bit. I took double bass lessons when I was in grade 4. And again, I still do a lot of that. And I grew up playing in like orchestras, jazz bands, big swing bands, a couple like Celtic fiddle groups. And then I remember my dad got me an electric bass when I was in grade 6. And I played it for...
Started young, man.
Oh, yeah.
I only started bass in grade 8.
Yeah,
you know?
Because I played double bass. That was sort of like the next step. My dad's like, yeah, he wants to do the band thing.
That's awesome.
I played electric bass for a couple months. And when I couldn't play Thunderstruck, I thought, this is a terrible instrument. I want a guitar. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of when that started. I started playing, jamming in friends' garages and making terrible sounding bands. In high school, met up with a few guys. We started playing like kind of hardcore stuff. Have a ton of friends from playing in the scene around then. After, I still kept up playing in orchestras. And I remember the first time I was in a proper recording studio, we were in Metalworks doing a big like symphony recording. And I just remember thinking it looked really fun being on that side of the glass. So I kind of went to the control room. They gave me a little bit of a tour. I think I was in like grade 7 at the time, so I didn't really know what anything was. And I remember all through high school thinking about, potentially getting into recording, not really knowing what that was or what it meant. I ended up finding a production school out in London, Ontario called OEArt. Went there. It was like a 3-year program condensed into 11 months. So just a really compact, intense year. And we kind of took everything from music production, engineering, live sound, a little bit of sound design. Right from the get-go, I knew I wanted to work in studios and do the actual music production thing, just sort of being around it for so long. And that's kind of it. After that, I started freelancing in my parents' bedroom, a little bit as I saved up to kind of move to the UK.
Yeah, I saw that you like spent a bunch of time in the UK. What was that about, and why'd you end up there?
Okay, so when I was at OER, about maybe midway through the year, one of our teachers, our production teacher, said, go listen to 5 or 6 of your favorite records, find out where they were done, who worked on them, like do a little bit of a deep dive and maybe try and get in contact with somebody who worked on those albums. And 5 of the ones that I was listening to at the time, like big into heavy stuff, were at this little studio called Outhouse in Reading, which if you've ever been to the UK, it's like maybe 25 minutes, half-hour train ride out of London. So I tried emailing, got nothing. I actually tried calling, didn't get through. At the time, one of my cousins was in a pretty like heavy touring band around here. And they were on tour with this band called Architects, who had just recorded at the studio that I wanted to get in touch with. So I remember going to the show, going to the after party with my cousin, talking to those guys. And I was like, hey, I know you were at Outhouse Studios. I'd love to get some sort of contact, like an email, something, some direct line. And they're like, absolutely, no problem at all. We'll get you in touch. But they were all wasted, so I got nothing. The exact same thing happened with another band called Lower Than Atlantis. They had, I think like the week before they were in Buffalo recording with John at Outhouse. And same thing. My dad drove me across the border to the States, went to the show in Buffalo. There was maybe 12 kids there. So same thing. I got talking to them after their set. I was like, hey, I know you guys just worked at Outhouse Studios. I'd love to get some sort of contact. And they're like, absolutely, no problem. We've got our American phones on us right now, so we don't have anybody's numbers, but we'll definitely get that sorted for you. It was a bunch of British guys first time in the States, and they just found out about Four Loko, so they were like on another planet when I talked to them too. Again, got nothing. So I ended up saving up for about a year, 8 months to a year, doing some freelance recording out of my parents' place, shipping boxes part-time, just, saving. So I booked a flight to Amsterdam, did a little month-long Euro trip as I was making my way to England. I remember taking the train from Paris to London and getting to the border agent. And he's like, okay, what's your purpose for the trip? I was like, I'm trying to move here. He's like, okay, where are you moving? I have no address yet. I don't really know. He's like, okay, well, give us the name of a friend or family contact and somebody's address and a phone number. I said, I don't know anybody in England. I actually have nothing. So looking back on it, I'm surprised they let me in.
Yeah, that's like a red flag, right? And
very much.
If you showed up to if you landed in JFK and you said that, they'd be like, okay, go back to whatever country you just came from.
You're gonna turn right around.
Yeah.
But I remember they finally let me in. I ended up sleeping on my bag in King's Cross Station for 2 nights.
Oh my God.
And then I found a hostel that had an open room, so I stayed at this hostel for about a week and a half. And the way the visa I had worked, it was a work travel 2-year thing. I had to leave the country and come back in on the exact date. So I could stay for a week and then I had to go somewhere in Europe and then come back to activate the visa. So during that week, I stayed at this hostel around Hammersmith area, took a train from London to Reading every day looking for a place to live, which again, if you've been around the UK, trains are not cheap. I spent so much money on trains. I found a place to live, which is a whole nother story. It was a shared house that was 26 or 27 people living in it. It was terrible, but it was cheap and something I could afford. Again, I still didn't know the address of the studio.
You literally moved to England to check out the studio that you had no idea how to get. You don't know anything about.
I just knew that I liked the sound of that place.
Wow.
I
all in.
That's it. I didn't really think much about it. It just kind of worked.
Yeah. That's
at
crazy.
the time, I think he's changed it now, but at the time there was no address listed online. So all it said was walking distance from a Premier Inn and a Travelodge. I remember every day I would go have a new showing at some apartment or sublet or whatever it was. And then I would just walk around Reading trying to find a studio, or there was a couple music shops. So I'd stop in at the music shops, Be like, hey, I know there's a studio around somewhere, and everybody had heard of it. Like they'd done some pretty big albums, but they're like, yeah, we don't know where it is. You have to actually book time, and then they send you the address. Yeah, just I wandered for weeks. And then when I had to leave the country and come back in to start my visa, I stayed in Germany for a weekend. And at the same time, my then girlfriend, my wife now, and her mom were trying to like dig for me. And they heard it was by this one-off like boutique hotel, sort of like on the west side of Reading. So when I got back, I ended up walking around there for a day, but it was really residential. So like it just didn't really make sense. It's like, there's no studios here. After walking around for the day, I knocked on the door of this hotel. I was like, hey, my mate's band's recording at Outhouse today. I'm a little bit late and kind of lost. I don't know where it is. And I remember the guy came outside. He's like, oh yeah, it's like 5 houses down on the left. So it turns out it was just in his backyard. He had this big 18th century coach house in his like back garden that he had gutted and like floated a studio in. And I guess the reason that he took it offline or like took the address off was they did a big You Me at 6 album. And at the time, every day there would be like loads of people just waiting for the band to finish up. So I came back the next morning with like a little resume and everything, knocked on the door. Now that I know him, I'm lucky he was home. He just like, John, the owner, loves mixing albums, didn't love the tracking side. So he had a guy in the studio always working on that. There was 2 other ones. And whenever he was home, he'd just be in his living room mixing. And then he was a big Jaguar fan. So he had just like 5 or 6 Jags, like the cars at the time.
Oh my God.
So that was his thing, was just hop in a Jag and go cruise for as long as he felt like.
Wow. Good for him.
Yeah.
That's a lot of cars.
He's
a lot of luxury vehicles.
Crazy guy. He's off topic, but above the studio, like there's like a little sort of hatch door. If you're walking in, it's small. There's like a booth, which is the size of like maybe my room. Like it could fit a drum kit pretty tight, but that's about it. And then little control room. But down the hall, there's like a little ladder. And above that, there was this medieval banquet hall that he'd built. So like you go up this hatch and it's just like tapestries and suits of armor. I think at one point during the 2 years I was there, we both put on suits of armor and played giant chess in his backyard. Like eccentric guy, love him. Anyway,
wow.
Off topic. I knocked on his door and this like grumpy British dude just, he's like, what? I was like, is this Outhouse Studios? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. Are you John, the owner? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I came from Canada. I had a lot ready to say to you guys when I found this place, but I don't remember any of it. You're really intimidating. And I just sort of talked at him for like 10 minutes. And it was mid-February. So it was cold. And he's like standing out of his door. And after I kind of realized that I was rambling, I was like, oh, I'm sorry, man. Do you have a minute? He's like, sure. Come in. He's like, okay, no problem, man. You came a ways to find this place. I'm sorry I didn't respond to your emails. He's like, let me touch base with Ben and James, so the other 2 guys that worked at the studio. He's like, I won't leave you hanging. We'll give you a call. What's your phone number? I was like, I don't have a phone yet. I just moved here. So he ended up taking my email, which I had no way to check at the time. I got my mom to ship me my laptop. So as soon as that came in, I was like going back and forth to this coffee shop because the house I lived in also had no Wi-Fi. Finally got a message from Benny. Said, come by the studio. We'll have a chat. And I remember going into the back garden. He's like, I hear you came a long way. We can probably keep you for like a month. And then we have a work experience kid coming in. So that's kind of like what we can give you, which turned out to be a lie. That was just their out if they didn't like me. And I was there for about 2 years. Yeah.
That's great. Wow. That's such a crazy story. You just like, this is the place I want to make records. I'm just going to go there because I can't find it. And then bug them until they let me learn something, or like I don't know, like was that, what was your game plan? Like you were just
really
like,
don't know.
You were just like, I need to find out how they made these records. That was it.
Yeah. I remember after that teacher said, go home and find these albums. Every week he would do this thing where like anybody in the class could bring in an album or a song and say like, how did they get that sound? What's this guitar tone? What's this drum sound? And I'd always bring in something from Outhouse. He's like, years of experience. That was always the answer. I was like, okay, well,